Bodh Gaya is a small town in northeastern India. Throngs of pilgrims have come here from all over the world for more than 16 centuries. For Buddhists, there are hundreds of holy places, but none more sacred than this one. Bodh Gaya is the sacred point from which the Buddhist faith radiates. Some pilgrims travel great distances, reciting prayers and prostrating themselves every step of the way. It is their Mecca and Jerusalem. Their Holy of Holies is not the imposing temple beside them, but a simple fig tree, Ficus religiosa, the Bodi tree. The tree, it is said, is descended from the Buddha's time. Every pilgrim knows the story of how Sidharta, after accepting the rice milk from the young girl, put aside the rags he was wearing, bathed himself in a nearby river, and strengthened, sat down in the shade of the Bodi tree and began to meditate.
It was springtime. The moon was full. Before the sun would rise, Sidharta's long search would be over.
He sat down under a Bodi tree in the shelter of the natural world in all of its beauty and fullness. And he said, "I will not move from this place until I have solved my problem.
Let my skin and sinews and bones dry up, together with all the flesh and blood of my body," he said. "I welcome it. But I will not move from this spot until I have attained the supreme and final wisdom." All at once, Mara, Lord of Desire, rose to challenge him. With an army of demons, he attacked. Sidharta did not move, and their weapons turned into flowers.
Mara is the ruler of this realm of desire, this world that we all live in. And what he's afraid Sidharta is going to do when he attains enlightenment and becomes the Buddha is conquer that world. That is, he's going to do away with desire. He's going to wreck the whole game.
Mara did not give up. He sent his 3 daughters to seduce him. Sidharta remained still.
When he faces Mara, he faces himself and his own destructive capacity. But he's not the warrior trying to do battle with those qualities. He's discovered his own capacity for equanimity. He has become like, the top of the great Himalayan mountains, The weather is passing over him, storms are raging around him, and he sits like the top of the mountain, impassive, not in a trance state, totally aware of everything. So he frustrates Mara.
Sidharta resisted every temptation Mara could devise. The Lord of Desire had one final test. He demanded to know who would testify that Sidharta was worthy of attaining ultimate wisdom, and his demon army rose up to support him. Sidharta said nothing. He reached down and touched the ground, and the earth shuddered. Mara's demons fled.
The Buddha reaches down and with his finger touches the earth. He says, "The earth is my witness." He said, "Mara, you are not the earth. The earth is right here, beneath my finger." And the earth is what we're talking about. Accepting the earth, not owning the earth, not possessing the earth, but the earth just as it is, abused and exploited and despised and rejected and plowed and mined, spat on, and everything else, it's still the earth, and we owe everything to it.
Sidharta meditated throughout the night, and all his former lives passed before him.
He remembers all his previous lives, infinite numbers of previous lives. Female and male and every other race and every other being in the vast ocean of life forms. And he remembered that all viscerally, so that means his awareness expanded to be all, so that all the moments of the past were completely present to him.
He gains the power to see the process of birth, death, and rebirth that all creatures go through. He's given this sort of cosmic vision of the workings of the entire universe.
As the morning star appeared, he roared like a lion. "My mind," he said, "is at peace." The heavens shook, and the Bodi tree rained down flowers. He had become the awakened one, the Buddha.
Something new opens up for him, which he calls nirvana, or which he calls awakening.
He said, "At this moment, all beings and I awaken together." So it was not just him, it was all the universe. He touched the earth, as earth is my witness. Seeing this morning star, all things and I awaken together.
It's not like entering a new state, it's uncovering or surrendering to the reality that has always been there. He realized he'd always been in nirvana, that nirvana was always the case. Your reality itself is nirvana. It's the unreality, it's your ignorance that makes you think you're this self-centered, separate being trying to fight off an overwhelming universe and failing. You are that universe.
You're already enlightened. He's saying the capacity for enlightenment, that your awakeness already exists within you.
Nirvana is this moment seen directly. There is nowhere else than here. The only gate is now. The only doorway is your own body and mind. There's nowhere to go. There's nothing else to be. There's no destination. It's not something to aim for in the afterlife. It's simply the quality of this moment.
Just this room where we are. Pay attention to that. Pay attention to who's there. Pay attention to what isn't known there. Pay attention to what is known there. Pay attention to what everyone is thinking and feeling, what you're doing there, and pay attention. Pay attention.
For weeks, the Buddha remained near the Bodi tree, peaceful and serene. He was tempted to retire into a profound solitude, instead of trying to teach others what it had taken him 6 long years to discover for himself.
He wants to stay there. He's very happy. He doesn't want to go out. He says to himself, no one is going to understand this. You know, people are going to think I'm crazy. They're going to think I'm nuts.
Buddha saw the nature of the people. Envy and jealousy and strong negative mental states. All the people in the world, they are like the fishes wriggling in the very shallow water. So Buddha, he himself, afraid to teach the people.
The myth is that a god comes to the Buddha. Brahma comes on his knees and says, please, we need you. Why don't you try talking about what you just understood? Because the world needs it. The gods need it and the men need it, you know? People need it.
And then Buddha decided to give his teachings. Because of a great compassion. It's not an ordinary compassion.
When you feel the feelings of others, you automatically don't want them to feel bad. You feel the feeling of your hand, you don't put it in the oven. I mean, you're not being compassionate to your hand, you just feel the pain, so you're not going to put it there. So you feel others' pain, you're going to do your best to help them alleviate it.
When somebody becomes enlightened, something blooms in his heart. It's like a flower blooms and it cannot hold the fragrance. It has to naturally release. So it's like he naturally had to release his radiance. He has to share this joy that was in his heart.
35 years old, the Buddha would devote the rest of his life to bringing his teachings, the Dharma, the fundamental laws of all things, into the world. But as he had feared, it would not be easy. As he set off to share what he had learned, he met a wandering ascetic. "Who is your guru?" the ascetic asked him. The Buddha said he had no guru, that he had attained enlightenment on his own. "It may be so," the ascetic said, and walked away. On his first attempt to teach, the Buddha had failed.
Buddha meets someone who doesn't see anything special about him, because the awakened Buddha doesn't look any different from anybody else. He is ordinary. Buddhism is not about being special. Buddhism is about being ordinary. And it is not about the continual exudation of bliss. It is about walking a normal human life with normal human beings, doing normal human things. And this reminds you that you yourself might be a Buddha. At this moment, the person you're looking at might be one. It's an interesting practice. Just each person you see as you walk down the street, Buddha? Buddha? Buddha, Buddha, Buddha.
From Bodh Gaya, the Buddha walked west nearly 200 miles and crossed the Ganges River. He was still searching for a way to explain to others what he feared was unexplainable, the path to the enlightenment he himself had experienced. In a deer park in Sarnath, not far from the Ganges, he would try again. His 5 former companions were still practicing the austerities he himself had abandoned. From far off they saw me coming, and on seeing me made a pact with one another, the Buddha recalled. Friends, here comes Sidharta, living luxuriously, straying from his ascetic practice. He doesn't deserve to be bowed down to.
These are his buddies who were just disappointed and disgusted with him for giving in after they'd all been trying to starve themselves into enlightenment. So they're a little distrustful at the beginning.
They refer to him as an equal, and he then tells them, no, that's not the term you should use when you refer to a Tathagata, to a being who's gone beyond. And so he sets them straight. And they then become the first people to hear the content of what he realized under the Bodhi tree.
His first teaching would later be called Setting in Motion the Wheel of the Dharma, because it brought the Buddha's message into the world for the first time. He did not propound a dogma. Instead, he spoke from his own experience, out of his own heart. He had known the abandon of the sensualist and the rigors of the ascetic. Now, he would disavow both of them.
The Buddha said, I've discovered a new way, and it's not the path of asceticism, and it's not the path of sensory indulgence. It's the middle way. What the Buddha was always doing was saying everything needs to be balanced. So, the middle way was always balancing between, excesses on this side, excesses on the other side.
The path to enlightenment lay along the middle way, the Buddha taught, and the ascetics listened. Now he would answer the question that 6 years before had provoked his spiritual journey, the question of suffering.
Buddhists don't have a creation story. There is no creator deity. It's not really of interest. It's not an issue. What's of interest is the problem of human suffering and the solution to human suffering. Pretty much everything else, right, is beside the point.
The Buddha's analysis of suffering came in the form of what have come to be called the Four Noble Truths.
There is no commandments or anything. The first noble truth is that there is suffering in this world. Generally, this suffering has been mistranslated.
Suffering is not entirely accurate to the word that the Buddha probably used. It means something closer to dissatisfaction, that, we're never quite happy, and if we are, that's gone in an instant anyhow.
And he says that this suffering, this unsatisfactoriness, doesn't arise by itself. It has causes. Our own mind causes it.
While the second noble truth asserts that suffering has a cause, the third noble truth makes an astonishing claim.
You really can be free of suffering by understanding the cause of suffering. Nobody tells you that. And so that was a huge announcement.
The problem, Buddha taught, is desire. How to live with the confused and entangling desires of our own minds.
People often misunderstand Buddhism as saying, in order to wipe out suffering, you have to wipe out desire. If that was what the Buddha was saying, then where does the desire for enlightenment fit in? The Buddha is saying, be smart about your desires.
Desire must be there. Without desire, how can lead our life? Without desire, how can achieve Buddhahood? Strong desire to become Buddha. But desire to harmful, that bad.
With the fourth and final noble truth, the Buddha laid out a series of instructions for his disciples to follow, a way of leading the mind to enlightenment called